Thank you so much, Agata Zasada, for joining us today. Really excited to go through this culture interview with you. Let's get started by having you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your work history and maybe a little bit something about yourself.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Agata. I'm currently the Senior Vice President of People Experience at a company called Paystone. I'm personally based out of Vancouver, Canada. Paystone was headquartered in London, Ontario. So in 2021, here I am. I've worked at some really cool brands, most recently at Banantech, which has merged with a German-based company called Staffbase. Prior to that, I was at Spence Diamonds. And prior to that, I was at Hootsuite and Lululemon and Olympic Broadcasting Services Vancouver for the 2010 Olympics. Yeah, I have a husband and 2 little kids, and we're living life in the smoky Vancouver time right now.
Thank you so much for introducing yourself. I'd like to start this off by asking a question about how you would describe your job or what you do in an average work week to a 5-year-old or a 95-year-old.
Yeah, this is great. I have a son that's 4.5, and he does not understand what I do. So I keep trying this. So let's see if it works. So my job is to enable and empower employees to do incredible work with as little friction as necessary, while focusing all those individuals' efforts and impact to a single common goal, with the hopes of resulting in an extraordinary business results and very happy and engaged people. So there's a balance.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love the mission statement. It's solid and something I'm sure you've been developing over time.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So how would you define culture at the highest level?
Yeah, I was thinking about culture in advance of this conversation, and I always think of like the countries I think about in terms of like, unique cultures. And I've been fortunate to travel the world in some places I've never got to go to. But like, I think I would describe culture as an organic summation of general beliefs, behaviors, and knowledge. And I think that a lot of the times when we describe a culture, it's a point in time. It's never static, it's never perfect, and it's never completely wrong either.
Yeah, well said. It's really hard when we try to define culture around a single point in time, because you're so right. It is a constantly evolving and changing thing. If you could create the ideal organizational culture with no restrictions such as cost or time, what are the 3 things that would be most important to you?
Okay, cool. I think about this often, and maybe it's because of my position, but and a little bit timely on my part. Recently, we just posted a blog Paystone around our people first strategy. But this has been something that I've been working across multiple organizations. And the first is let employees lead, which is such a opposite way of thinking of businesses. We have this like, leadership and then more leadership and then like layers and layers. But if you just flipped it upside down and let employees lead on what they need to be empowered, effective, and aligned, I think the culture will be such an incredibly like nimble and agile and like focused, which is like completely the opposite, I think, of what our status quo thinking of businesses. The second is crystallize a destination. So more and more I get clear that organizations are really good at saying, we're going north. That's a direction. That's not a destination. Like, are we going, from Vancouver, am I going, 100 mile, or am I going to Alaska, or am I going to the North Pole? North can mean also, Whistler for me, and it's a 2-hour drive. So it's okay to not know that the destination just yet, but maybe create a mini destination saying, once we get here, we'll know more to know how much further we need to drive. Giving people a clear anchor is, I think, so empowering for individuals, because they spend a lot of time trying to make it make sense. I think our brains are, I need to know what the goal is so I can do the thing to get to the goal. When the goal is not clear, they spend time trying to fill in the goal. Or, when something is missing in a puzzle, you start looking for that puzzle piece, and you know what you think it should look like. It's the same thing. The third is, which I think, again, is probably against the natural grain, is allow for failure, celebrate it, and always assume the best intention. For most companies, we're like, we're not saving lives. I'm not doing heart surgery. Like, mistakes are going to happen. And like, even in the medical field, when, you know, doctors are in surgery, mistakes happen, but it's always, again, learn from it. It's okay. I mean, you know, I don't want anyone to die, but like, assume best intent, right? Those doctors went to school and went through so much training with the intent to never hurt anyone, harm anyone, right? And so that's kind of that same thing. And that's so hard because when something breaks, our natural instinct is to find blame and make it go away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Awesome. Those are so great. It reminds me of one of my favorite lines, which is everyone's doing the best job that they can. That's something that was shared with me to really put into context when something goes awry. With my kids, I have a 5-year-old and 8-year-old. With my 8-year-old, I'm always really focused on resolution instead of blame. Like someone falls, something happens, whatever. It really doesn't matter whose fault it is unless someone had seriously negative intent. What really matters is how do we resolve this and how do we pick our friend up off the ground and make sure they're okay and that kind of thing. You mentioned people first. So this is it's not necessarily a new concept, but it's a new encapsulation of something that, you know, for our organization, we look to certify workplace cultures in Canada. And, you know, for us, it's really people first, you know, mentality that we're looking for in our prospective customers and partners. Tell me a little bit about what people first means to you, how long it's been around, and how long it's been solidified in the way we've sort of heard about it in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I can speak from more like really detailed to what we're doing here at Paystone. So I think, you know, early 2021, there was already rumors of like this, like return to the office, don't return to the office. You know, what are we going to do? What is everyone doing? What's this new normal? And prior to me joining the organization, you know, the executive team has been like thinking about it, like really learning from other people, Apple, Microsoft, you know, Google's, what they're doing, and the backlash that employees are giving, right? Like we're now hybrid or now we're fully remote and like no one's happy, no one's winning. And so they started to have this kind of, you know, methodology of like, why do we have to pick one? And, you know, I feel fortunate that, you know, I came in and got to bring in a little bit of my experience, my education into this and kind of brought it home. But it's actually completely location agnostic. It is let people choose what is the lifestyle that they need to be effective in the workplace. And whether that means I'm fully remote and I, you know, travel across Canada and back three times a year and I'm always available, and we're focused on the results, the impact people have versus the 9 to 5. Now, there are certainly roles that are very customer facing, and you know there are some constraints on that, but those are not all roles. And then if you're someone that's like me and I have 2 children, and being at home and working in the same condo as my children are, you know, 5 days a week is really difficult. I'm probably gonna, you know, gravitate in my current place in my life to being in a workplace like an office. And there's some individuals that are in between, right? They're like, I actually live in the suburbs. I would love to be here 4 days a week, and then 1 day a week go into an office and see other people. And again, it doesn't matter because today, just like culture, what happens today will not be the same thing what people want next year and the following year. And everyone is in a different point in their life. And ultimately, you know, this is a very specific thing to what's happening in 2021 with COVID, but this is the same approach with many things. And I would say that people for strategy would show up in similar ways for whether it's performance management or learning and development. You could use the same philosophy of let the employees lead on what is going to benefit them and help them be able to do the most impactful work as possible.
Awesome. Awesome. Tell me a little bit about, you know, that we talk a lot about good organizational culture. When you think of poor organizational culture, what are the first 2 or 3 things that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I think this is going to sound obvious, but I have 3. So the first is like control command, lack information, like hide information from employees, right? Like they can't know, because if they know, they're going to do something bad or they're going to leave, or there's this fear that employees, if you give them information, they're out. And most of the time they're like, I also want to solve this problem. So this command control and like, yeah, fear-based operation. The second is one size fits all across the board solutions, or even worse, sometimes there's like one size fits all, which is like, you know, the cheapest version, and then there's this like diamond platinum version at the top, which creates these like the haves and has not. Both of those are not great, right? Like one size fits all doesn't fit all. We're different t-shirt sizes. Why would it be one size? The third is when an organization fails to achieve goals, blaming the employees. Like, what? Every time I hear that, I'm just like, it's not, like there's no way 100 people colluded for failure. Like to fail a goal. It's completely the opposite. And those are really prevalent when you hear of organizations that are like suffering culturally. You can see it on their Glassdoor results. You can find it really quickly. Even in an interview, when you're interviewing someone, it's usually quite stark when you see that. Some people have been burned in those circumstances, and when they hear the complete opposite, they're kind of like, I don't know if it's true, which I get it. But look at what people are saying about the organization. Ask some pointed questions, but those are the three things that come to mind when I think of like poor organizational culture.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tell us about a time that you were able to create and build culture successfully. What did you do? How did it work? What was the hardest part of building culture for you in that sort of instance or that story?
Yeah, you probably saw my eyes flicker of like all the places I've worked. I think like I feel personally very fortunate. Like this is, I guess, my Agata disclaimer. I feel so fortunate. I've worked in some incredible brands and organizations, and I loved all of them truly. And they were all very different. Creating and building culture is not a single person's role. Like regardless of whether I'm at the top of the pyramid or in the middle of the pyramid or at the bottom, I promise you, I've never owned this by myself. And if I did, it wouldn't have survived me leaving, right? And no matter where I'm in my point in career, like this isn't, even marriages don't always last forever. So like there is a point of which everyone exits. This is that never ending shift in culture. And so it's never been my like individual responsibility. Now, getting to your actual question, I've recently left Banana Tag, and it will always play a special place in my heart for various reasons. But culture and the dedication of the three founders had to it was outside of the realm of normal dreams. To be honest, like I remember kind of pinching myself in my interview with the founders, like they really care like this much, which also is sometimes a double-edged sword because they cared so much. Now, the hardest parts in terms of building and creating a culture successfully, like besides the work that is required to align things, is figuring out when to hit the brakes and when to hit gas. So sometimes when you're doing a pivot in culture or building something up because you're scaling, you'll need to figure out what's the right things to spend time on and what to accelerate quickly and things that are the right things to slow down. It's never a perfect Gantt chart. Like I'm so sorry for anyone that's listening. You can create as many Asana boards and Gantt charts and plans and calendars. Building culture successfully, you have to be responding to what's happening in the organization. And like when you have tailwinds, you take them. You run as far as you can so that you can get as much output impact for the efforts you're putting in. And that's really difficult. The second is within all that, being responsive to the environment and the temperature and the weather, it's also being clear and defining the problem. I think people in culture, HR, doesn't matter what you call yourself, even like outside of our industry, defining problems clearly is a lost art. And being clear about what the problem is and then looking at what is the true root cause of that problem. So an example I'll give you, prior to starting at Banana Tag, we had this executive offsite at Join, and like number one thing for the whole executive team was like, we need performance management. I've never had employees beg for performance management. Like you want a review, like you want a review, like to put in effort to put in a review, and you want your manager to do that too. Like that, most people dread reviews. And so it wasn't about the review, once going through the work of defining the problem, asking enough people and getting to the root cause, then solving the problem first with a philosophy and then with the tools and programs. In today's world, we are bombarded with how many solutions there are, and they do such a great job marketing it, saying, this is your problem and this is what we solve. And everyone can say, yep, that's my problem too. but understanding why can make an incredible difference on how you choose to implement that tool or system, or even if you need it, because sometimes your problem and your root cause are actually not the same. And I think, when I think about like building culture successfully, if you can get it to the root cause and the philosophy, it will transcend whoever's the leader, because it will be so accurate and so clearly understood that it's not like this system, if we don't renew it, it's all going to fall apart. Because all organizations are changing, all roadmaps are changing, all the bells and whistles. What you bought today is probably not going to look the same next week. So understanding what your philosophy is on why, those can change too, but those are easier to digest than our platform changed or solution changed or the person left. So yeah, to like summarize, hardest things are figuring out when to hit brakes and gas, and then defining the problem and looking for the root cause.
Awesome. That was really valuable. It was funny when you commented there, you're like, sorry that it's not a straightforward answer. I think it's a pretty realistic answer, right? What's the problem? Why do we have that problem? And then understanding how to prioritize as you move to solve and take care of those problems. You made me think a little bit about the balance that you've found in your career and just in general around sort of proactive and reactive or responsive activity. Tell me a little bit about when and how you're able to take proactive versus reactive or responsive approaches to people and culture from your experience. What does it mean? Like, do you have more capacity to be proactive, or the reactive is just there's so much going on that all you can do is respond and react? Tell us a little bit about sort of how you balance those and what you've seen in your career.
Yeah, I think it's easy to blame volume to be reactive. I think I've also fallen in that trap, but just like everything in life, I actually think Arnold Schwarzenegger said this, was like, everything is a choice. You have 24 hours a day. How much you sleep, what you spend those times that you're not sleeping is a choice. And I, ask for permission to break a few things for the greater good. And I think that's sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say yes, but take whatever you can. And looking for opportunities in the reactive moments to build knowledge, education, information, and even asking information to help you be proactive. So when you're in a conversation with a partner in the business and they're having an employee relations issue, and you're just like, you should have documented, right? Like that's like the most common thing. You should have documented. It's like, why don't we start thinking about the rest of your team now? Like, why don't you take that away as your homework, and next month we'll chat about it. Like, let's get ahead of this so that we're not in this reactive state, and finding ways to connect to kind of the direction of the organization, the vision, the values, the things you want in every instance. And you move away from this taskmaster to, slowly to a partner, to a thought partner. And this like strategic thought partner where, some things will still surprise you. Like someone, it happens all the time. Someone you're loyal, you said you're happy 2 weeks ago, resigns. Like, how did that happen? It happens. And you will never be 100% ahead of it, but it is a bit of a choice. And it's also finding the opportunities and slivers and building those into little widgets and more space. And it's also a choice. I think that as much as what Arnold said, it's like we all have our natural spaces where we feel that we've added value or had impact. And sometimes it's like, I love that checklist, right? And breaking away from our own habits to be proactive is actually the hardest thing.
Thank you so much. I think, really interesting to me there was that, you spoke of a reactive example where something happened, and then you're like, oh, let's turn this into a proactive system so that we don't have this again in the future, right? That was where and I think that's a really good way to look at it, is when there's a reactive thing, how do we prevent that in the future by taking proactive actions to put in systems or processes so that we can get ahead of things. I thought that was really valuable.
Cool.
Awesome. Imagine that you have, well, I'll go to this question instead. Sorry. You've worked developing people and culture at many different organizations, from retail giants to technology startups that are rapidly scaling. How would you compare the different strengths and challenges that each of these business models presents for modern people and culture programs and processes?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually get asked this quite often, like, why did the brands you've been under are really different, right? Like the Lululemon, the Olympics, Hootsuite, all Spence Diamonds, and then Fanatec, and now Paystone. They kind of are like, I don't get it. And one of the things that brings them all together is they're high growth, high scale, super ambitious organizations, and they're let's take the two spectrums: retail or manufacturing, and like tech. Retail will have distribution centers, manufacturer workers, retail locations, and then like a head office, right? Like, the command center per se. And you'll look at those four functions and they're so different. Warehouse workers tend to usually English as a second language, they don't sit at a desk all day, they're not using keyboards. Retail staff are extremely, communicative, highly love the product, or they wouldn't be doing what they do, and tend to be early in their careers, versus in manufacturing, where they may be in a completely different country under very different circumstances, comparatively to the head office, where many times people will use this as like the people that come up with the ideas, and then you go to tech and you're like, we're all one thing. Here's the thing: if you are in tech and you scale big, you're actually going to have the same problems. You're going to have these individuals in different countries in little micro sites together that may not speak English, or English as a second language, or not speak English at all. They may have different cultural beliefs from their own communities in which they operate in that don't translate to companies. So the problems of these different functions in retail versus tech are actually the same. And you can find them in tech, even in a small company, where you look at like the salespeople versus the developers. Everyone's like, we are not the same, but we all love this product. It's the same problem. It just shows up differently. And when you go back to that people first approach, you put the warehouse individuals and say, what is going to make you happy, and be aligned and know and continue to know what you're doing is matters and has an impact and is driving results. We got to find what that is so that it never breaks. The same thing as the retail employees and the head office, and build that level of empathy across the different functions, so that when someone has a great bright idea and they want to change something and make a big change, that they bring all the people along. The same thing happens in tech. So the difference is, when you want to make a change in tech, it can happen instantaneous, versus in product, there is a lead time. But it doesn't mean that communication doesn't break down. Now, the thing that they have also in common is that people that work in these organizations, doesn't matter what their roles are, tend, and what I hope more and more will happen, be aligned and in love with the product or the thing that the purpose of why this business exists. Now, I know not everyone, gets that opportunity and, does that, but I think that organizations and proactive people and culture practices, especially in recruiting, will help find a higher proportion of people that are values aligned and purpose aligned, that will make that even more fluid. So that's awesome. A very, very long answer.
Thank you. Your video has paused. If you can cancel the video, like hide it and then start it again, that might fix it for us.
Hopefully I got paused in it, like not so long.
What I think we'll do is we'll probably put like a single image thing over it for that, and maybe something funny, technical, difficult. You want to turn it back on?
I am on.
Oh, strange. It is.
For me, I can see myself moving, just so you know.
Okay. Awesome. There we go. Back to good.
Okay, we're back.
Sorry, I didn't mean to boot you out, but I muted you and then I couldn't unmute you, so I was like,
Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Great. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to move from a manager role to a director role? How did your time at Hootsuite help you on the path to move into a director role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think managers, like, this is Agata's opinion. This is not like, I just want anyone to think this is like the rule, but managers tend to be more players than coaches. They tend to be players, and they tend to think very my team, my function, my role, whatever that manager. You might be a manager of a function or people, like whatever that is. And directors have two things that are unique. That transition from manager to director is such a pivotal one. I think it's so hard. And then once you go there, it's like all of a sudden it's easy again. So the two things, when I reflect on what those were that the work, people in the director role or to get to director need to work exceedingly well with peers of other departments and to be able to work in ambiguity as a result of that peer collaboration better than anyone else. So you think of a manager who's like, I'm really good on my subject and I have full control, to all of a sudden I have way less control than I've ever had, but I still need to get my work done and bring other people along and influence and have conversations and, know to negotiate that you won't always win them all. And it also means that you get better at seeing the bigger picture. The company wins or the customer wins, whatever the right answer is more important than me winning. And that transition is really hard, especially for people that are very career aspirational, because we think you get to the top, I'm the winner. But the further up above you, the higher you go, you don't care about you anymore, less and less. And that is such a hard thing to transition. And letting go, right? Letting go. The second is owning your category end to end. And, I think when you get promoted to a director for the first time, yeah, you're going to still get a ton of direction and input from your leader. But the goal is, with time, you require less and less input, which means you become an expert in your function in the company. It doesn't mean I want you to become a PhD in blank, 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 because that may not be in your career path, but for that company. And you keep up with current events, new information, you keep learning, and while this is the balance, delivering time and time again, and continuously showing up to the business and adding value, that while learning and being also, learning how to collaborate and let go and drop the ego, like this is a very hard transition. But yeah, if you had to pick two things, that would be my two pieces of advice. Learn to work with peers, see the bigger picture. And the second is own your category end to end and continue to deliver.
Awesome. Yeah, it's probably not recommended, but if you want to lose your ego, have a child. It's almost automatic.
I have to.
Right? Yeah. What advice would you give to a small, nimble HR team working on people and culture? In your experience, where do you think they can make an outsized impact on their businesses?
Yeah, I always think about every percent of effort I put in, I want to have more than 1% back. So, in the business, in a SaaS perspective, like your LTV to CAC type ratio, I don't want it 1. I want it like 1 to 3. Like for every percent I put in, I want 3% output or impact. And looking at the things that you do, the 1% that gives you 0.5 or -2 impact, automate it. Automate as much as you can, as quickly as you can. The waste of time, the things that do not add value, and those are hard to let go because there's sometimes perceived belief, and this is that culture stuff. What was really important 2 years ago has to evolve. And having this handwritten card thing may not scale, may not serve where you are today and what you want to achieve. I'm just making up some organizations will do handwritten cards with offers and mail them and all this stuff, but it's different. The world has changed. Like, automate it, make one template, spend the time and then make it happen and just hold the line. Software companies do this all the time with terms, online terms. If you're not of $50,000 or $100,000 value, you're just on our online terms. We don't negotiate. You're not that. It's not that you're not important. It's not the value we can add to growing our business. So automate as much as you can, as quickly as you can, especially the things that are not at least 1-to-1. The second is outsource what you don't have time for or you won't learn quickly. And this is, again, really hard to do in our function because we're perceived as we're expected to be, the best role model of the organization, hold the line, build the culture flame, hold the flame, make the Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid, be the Kool-Aid. It's all the things. And you can't do, you're not an octopus. And that's why I think people in culture, people get burnt out really easy. And sometimes it's just like always, I'm always in conversations with vendors, potential vendors, consultants. Once every 2 weeks I go for a walk, meet someone. They're not always a great fit, but at least I know I have potential sources of outsourcing. I've talked to an organization that is not a traditional recruiting agency, which was the right solution for me right now. I was like, I've never needed them before, but I have I can send an email, get a call. We've talked months before, and like I've solved a problem in a week. That if I hadn't been thinking about always knowing where I can outsource, you all of a sudden are like, okay, now I need to find it. I might as well just do it myself. If you hear yourself say that so often, that means you haven't been building your kind of in a people and cultures version of this, a book of business. You won't be able to outsource, and there's no shame. Every company outsources a ton of stuff, like whether it's marketing, radio spend, websites. Like, why is it okay for every other function in the business to outsource something, but not people and culture? So I challenge you that sometimes outsourcing is not actually the most expensive way. It's going to, have the best return of investment and help you stay away from doing the 1 to -5, output, and give you the space to move from that reactive proactive. And you could be one person. You can be an HR generalist in a 40-person company and still do this. There's no reason you can't.
Awesome. So I'm just going to explain a couple of acronyms in there. SaaS, service as a software, and then LTV is lifetime value or customer lifetime value, and then CAC or CAC is customer acquisition cost. And in SaaS, LTV, your lifetime value of your customer against your acquisition cost, is your most important metric. And so that's what Agata was talking about a moment ago. The thing you made me think about was something I tell a lot of junior employees, which is your job's to scale yourself out of a job. And once in a while they say, well, then I won't have a job. And I say, no, then you'll get a promotion. Then you're like moving up and understanding what you need to do.
It's totally true. I have yet to meet someone who said, I've scaled myself out of a job, I'm actually unemployed. If you find someone, I would like to talk to them, and I hope that they got like a massive like bonus and like a retirement, because like I have yet to meet a person in 15 years of being in this function that has done that.
Yeah, I can think like maybe they'd scale themselves out of a job and then take that scale like whatever they did and then start their own business about how to do that for other people.
Yeah,
there's a lot of awesome stuff there. So I'm going to ask you to imagine that you're jumping into a time machine and you go back to meet yourself on your first day of work at Hootsuite. What would you tell yourself at that point to prepare yourself to be as successful in your role, knowing what you know today?
Oh, I think this is I'll say it, but I have always had this piece of feedback haunt me since I was a child. And I feel like it haunted me the worst at Hootsuite, which was my style of communication can come off as quite direct and abrupt. And when you're at the, in a more senior role, there's a level of confidence of your peers that doesn't rub them the wrong way. I wish someone was like, focus on your communication and be highly empathetic. And I think that was one thing that it's not that I'm not an empathetic person, I just never led with that. And my style of communicating was very direct. And I think the term I would have received there was like abrasive. And in certain cultures across the globe, they didn't even catch it. But I think that was the one thing that I wish I would have done, and it would have probably helped me a long time ago.
Awesome. You and me both, I'll tell you that. It's interesting. It reminds me in my new role, really understanding workplace culture in Canada. And there's this handbook written largely for new immigrants and people new to the workforce. But the book starts off with kind of 2 core rules about a workplace culture in Canada. And those 2 core rules are, 1, you put the feelings of others first. And 2, it's generally an indirect or passive communication style where you have to kind of suss out what someone really is trying to say to you because they're trying to protect your feelings or trying not to be abrasive. And, we talk about other cultures, other business cultures, the United States, for example, where things are much more direct. And I've found it very interesting working with people from around the world to see how, my style or my workplace culture fits with theirs. And it's interesting to see that Canada is relatively indirect compared to a lot of the rest of the world, for sure.
Yeah. I love the book by Kim Scott around radical candor. And I didn't do a good job. Like, I was candor, but I didn't have the clarity. I didn't build the relationships and lead with the empathy that built the trusting relationships that I genuinely cared about those people or the customer or the results. Like, I just came off as like, get the thing done, or like, this is how we're going to do it. And for anyone that like struggles with that, or, I'd say Radical Candor is an incredibly great book. If you haven't read it, I'm always surprised people haven't, but I think I just like, and I inhaled that book, and it was like totally helped me even continue to evolve there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a great recommendation for everybody. What are the most impactful things that you do to translate the organizational vision for your team?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. I don't know if I would use the word translate, but maybe I'll use like spotlight. Maybe because English is my second language, I'm always terrified to use the word translate. But spotlight the vision coming to life every single time you see it. So always celebrate, praise people behaving in line with the values, even if there's failure attached, because it means you're behaving you're congruent to where we want to be or how we want to be. And then celebrate all the micro wins that will get you a step closer to achieving that vision. And then communicate that you're celebrating it because they are getting us closer to that vision. And it sounds so silly for people that are in our function or at the top saying it often and often and often. Like, sometimes executives say like, I already said this like 16 times. It doesn't matter. Employees need to hear it over and over, and not because they didn't catch it, because they need to know it hasn't changed. Continue to assume that they need to know that the ruler has stayed the same, or the ruler has moved or slightly shifted. That's okay too. But they need to hear it over and over to continue to be like, yep, I'm doing the right thing. I'm still aligned. I'm still here. I get you. It's not that they forget. It's just they're so focused on the outcomes of what they're doing. Hearing it again doesn't feel like demeaning. And so back to summarize that is spotlight, every single opportunity you have when people are behaving. So your actions in line with the values which are set up to serve the vision. Celebrate and praise micro wins, and always recommunicate that the reason you're celebrating is it lines up to that vision or organization vision.
Nice. The most common answer to this from leaders is repetition. So, and it's so funny because everyone always couches it, but everyone says the same thing, that you need to continue to repeat it. And you know what? Especially in a rapidly growing organization, suddenly you have 2 new people who they weren't there at the last town hall or the last quarterly, and so they might not have heard that. And so it's important to reiterate, even if some people's eyes are rolling to the back of their heads, was one of the comments.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. So we're in a hyper-competitive hiring space right now. A lot of hiring managers across the country are dealing with an increasingly challenging environment to recruit and retain talent. What would you recommend to smaller companies who can't necessarily compete completely on compensation? What are some of the things that they can do to acquire top talent and potentially compete with those that have the financial capability to offer the best compensation?
Yeah, I get asked this all the time, and I feel confident that money is not the key driver for most people. When organizations or when a candidate has multiple offers and they love both companies, yes, the lens that ends up being used is compensation. But when you look at, if you do a great job explaining what you're doing, what the purpose is, how that person will be able to, people go to organizations to have impact. Like, most people don't want to just sit there and hate their day. They spend 40 plus hours a week working on something. They want it to have impact and meaning. And if you can describe that really, really well and identify the, when we started this interview with like, what is people and culture? How would you describe it? How would you describe your job? Remove as much friction for that person to achieve those results and grow. People don't want to be stagnant. Like, most of us want to continue to improve and be better. And whether you're an artisan in your profession or a leader, you always want to be improving. And identifying how that individual will be able to do that in your organization, I think is truly more important. I've seen smaller organizations that I've worked at win candidates knowing that we're going to pay them less because that's just what we could afford. But because we did such a great job of like explaining, proving it, writing it, and then following through with it, were organizations that were like, we can hire anybody. You're just a number. And not everyone wants to be in the organizations and fight the corporate ladder fight in a mega company. So assuming that money is the driving factor, if it is, that person might not be the fit for you anyway, right? Or understanding what is about the money that is so important. Again, that might be the problem. The root cause might be something different. They may see that they're valued based on money. How do you show that person they would be valued? Equity is also like another, avenue if your organization offers equity. Balanced lifestyle. So whether you're fully remote or have unlimited vacation, or do you have specific perks like a cleaner comes to your house, there's other things that people want than just a salary. Because for every $1,000 more, they're only getting like $25 on a paycheck. Like it's one Starbucks drink a week. It's not the things that are going to pivotally make that person's life incrementally better.
Awesome. Yeah, I think equity and that career path thing, like that career, because in a well-established organization, yeah, people can move up, but there's already people in those positions. There's potentially less opportunity to grow into them because you might be hiring somebody who has a previous experience at that level. So that's a really strong one. And equity, of course. Again, equity has a challenge, right? Because in the end, it might be worth nothing. You just don't know. But yeah, I think that career path, that's such a good one to ask somebody is like, where do you want to be and how can we help you get there with our organization? I think there's more rapid opportunities in smaller orgs for sure.
Yeah. I think the big companies, say you had a candidate, it's like, well, I got an offer from, X company, and they're just like, they're giving me all this stuff. It's like, but do they want you in that job for life? If you ask that question, and do they consider it a job? Do they call them job postings or career opportunities? Like, what is their mentality on people? Like, are you a widget, a number, a thing that's going to do something? Or are you going to be a human being in our organization and part of our team? There's ways that candidates can suss that out. And I think that more and more, even more so because of 2020 and 2021, the years that I think we've all had, some level of breakthroughs in our own development, that you learn that you can live with very little. I think everyone in the world can say, yep, I can live with way less than I originally had going into 2020. And so now there's a lot more choice. People are like, I want to do incredible stuff. Like, I just want to do good work. And so these, smaller organizations or the underdogs, you actually have a more level playing field now than you ever had.
Definitely. Well said. Recently, two companies, Coinbase and Basecamp, made public announcements regarding their desire and an initiative to not weigh in on political and sensitive topics. This is being seen through two extreme lenses, either as a really cowardly move or potentially a really smart move. How do you think organizations can navigate the increasingly challenging world where taking a side on an issue may alienate the opposing group? How do you see these moves by these organizations in particular?
Yeah, I don't have like a straight opinion on this. I, ironically enough, was on a walk yesterday and it came up in our conversation. And it was actually with someone that wasn't an HR professional or people culture, but was asking me the same kind of question. And my opinion is it depends. And if you go back to the kind of purpose, the vision, where you want to go as an organization, and what the impact, whatever the reason that they had these statements come out, there had to be a reason that it was impactful. So it might be internal impact. So let's say one political party was, aggressively against a certain demographic of employees or people in the world, and that doesn't stand up to the values or who the organization wants to be. Now, if there is some like moral issues with, say, the way the organization is operating, and organizations have had this, like, do I sell my product to a company that I do not align with? And it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing because literally your shareholders are saying, sell the thing. And then there's, there's that moral thing is like, is that the right thing to do? And it depends. Again, if you are in seed fund and pre-revenue, you might have to be understanding and if it's going to not fold your company, right? If all of a sudden you're like, this is either I fold my company based on making the right decision, or I have to, bend the rules or what I would like to do. And so the short answer is I don't have an extreme opinion on either. I usually do, which is ironic that I don't on this, because I think it depends on the organization. Now, if the backlash is from the employees, that means there was something that was not congruent from what they said they stand for and how they did it, right? Because if we were like, we are actually accepting of everybody, we're this like super open organization, except politics, it's all of a sudden, it's like, where did this come from? Now, if there's hey, we have 80% of our revenue comes from this political party, and the impact is we're going to fold our company or have to downsize by 80%, and you tell people in all, as honestly as you can without, saying, hey, the biggest whale customer is pretty mad at us. Again, you're never going to please everybody, but if you can get majority on board and like empathetic to the reasons why you had to do that or ask that of individuals, I think, it's hard because organizations no longer work in this 1960s constraints of like newspapers and telephones and like faxes. Like information is instantaneous. Like I have my like iMessage on my phone and my laptop or my iPad. I have a portal over there. Like I have so many devices that it's hard not to know what's happening at any given time. And the way of like freedom of speech was versus now is so different, right? Like someone could say something about the political party in the workplace in the 1960s, but it didn't echo hundreds of thousands of miles away where your customer could hear it. And now it is. And so I don't have a direct stance other than like, for employers to be like, how do we communicate this in a way that is a people first approach? How do we put our people first, or give them the knowledge and information to help them adjust their behavior for the benefit of the organization or our customer? And if you're an employee or someone that's been in the impact of that, put yourself in the shoes of like, why are they asking me this? Now, if it's a CEO that's like, I have the opposite political views and I want to make everyone my way, yeah, of course, I'd be mad. I'd be mad about that too. And that might be like, again, the values alignment where it's like, you said you care, you let us be ourselves and we can have different views, but your actions are the opposite. And then that's moving into those, less optimal organizational cultures. But I wouldn't assume the worst, is maybe what I would kind of, again, assume best intent and try to understand from both sides.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Last couple of questions here. How do you professionally develop? What books do you read? Are there podcasts that you're all about? What websites are you always on? What newsletters do you subscribe to? What stuff can people consume to get better at their craft like you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I read non-HR business books all the time. And I was joking with someone on my team today that, people and culture people, like we talk a lot in this very intangible thing, right? Like culture, you can't buy it, you can't see it. You know when it's there and you know when it's not. It's never perfect, it's never wrong. And so I love learning from other functions. So I love reading like sales books, like what motivates people. My favorite is actually product management has so many synergies to people and culture. So if you ever like, I just need to think about this in a different way, product people have to come up with something out of nothing a lot of the time and from a point of place. And so there's so many synergies. I'm looking at a book that got recommended to me, the No Rules. It's like, I think a Netflix culture one. I get book recommendations all the time. I take them, I literally buy them right away, and I just stack them, and I read every day, 20 to 30 minutes. Nice. I subscribe to every newsletter from every platform that I have, and I just like keep them in an inbox. And sometimes your brain just is like, I just can't do another meeting. And over lunch, I'll just read about things that interest me. I always look for things that I suck at. So I know I am not good in like a couple of functions. I will always start there. to keep trying to understand areas that don't come as naturally to me. Networking, I think I've talked about that in terms of like finding places to outsource. Like they're incredible. I don't learn through hearing. Like English is a second language, so it takes me, like podcasts are not my thing. I don't retain information that way. But like reading, doing things, I'm a visual learner. Conversation, like a dynamic conversation works. So finding your learning style and then just go there, because again, there's such a wealth of information. Just start anywhere. Like I think taking that learner mindset. There's some incredible resources which I can send you. You can add this as a link later. But just like top business books of the year. I think that's a great place to start. And there's also like some books that are like tried, true, and tested for years, like how to influence people, how to make friends and influence people. Like that book was written where there was no technology. Like people are riding on horses in this book, but they're so pivotal and so great and so timeless that don't be afraid to go find some like, vintage books.
The classics, yeah, the E-Myth. Yeah, sweet. Where can people find you online if they want to connect?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram if you want to see my personal life. I'm also on Twitter, but a little bit slower to respond there. But yeah, you can always. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and it's probably the easiest way to send me connect and a message as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Agata. I'm so grateful for you sharing your expertise, and I can't wait to share it with the world.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
And we're out.
All right.
Thank you. Any questions or thoughts or feedback or anything?
No, I didn't know those other questions were coming. Which
you wanted me to send you all of them?
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's so funny that political point of view. It's so, I don't know.
Yeah, the way I look at that one is it depends on you said it depends on who your customers are, right? So for Coinbase, super easy, global criminals use us, so we need to not weigh in on anything political. Yeah. And then for Basecamp, as I understood the story, was that it was, they make project management software for organizations, right? And they basically had Slack like blue and red, Republican, Democrat Slack conversations and stuff that was just boiling over. And they're just like, guys, like we can't have this on internal. It's distracting. It's negative. It creates divisiveness. And I think they suffer a lot because they're two white men. That's like, and then so I see the female, BIPOC response, which is you're so effing privileged to even imagine that you can remove people's beliefs and political views from the workforce. Like only a white man could think that's a thing that's possible, Yeah. So yeah, it's super powerful.
Yeah, I think it's hard. Like even like Banantag was three white male founders. Like if that again, I don't think knowing who they are, like so let's pretend that they had to do something that like no one would believe is like we're trying to push a belief on you. It's more that like it's distracting and now it's impacting our ability to run a business. And if you have the trust and the belief in your organization at that point, and while the message still is like stop talking about politics in the workplace, again, it's like if it's in alignment with like the values. So in Banantag, one of the values is focus on impact.
Nice. I like that.
So like we are literally not focusing on impact and like in this tizzy, right? So, or like empathy.
So it's easy to swing back to that and say, hey guys, are we focusing on impact in this like moment?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love the Banantag guys. When I moved up to Kelowna, the whole vibe of Banantag was kind of all over the place. Every event there, Corey was there and the team was there, and just really good vibe. And so many people from Fresh Grade and stuff, they've all transferred over to Banantag. So it seems like a great organization. Yeah. Was the merger, that was good for everybody?
Yeah, I think so. Like the product, like I'll just start with the product standpoint, like the product affinity and market affinity is incredible there, right? Like Staffbase was an employee app. They were email and newsletters, like together they like kind of fill the whole void. And then we were dominant in North America and they were more dominant in Europe. So like, again, you all of a sudden now have like cross-sell opportunities globally across the board. And yeah, the technology isn't overly, not complicated, but not so complicated that they can't merge the product in, let's say in a year. So the market opportunity is massive, like customers and so forth. So yeah, super cool. And because they're growing, no one's displaced, right? And
Awesome.
I think, yeah, like from
You weren't displaced?
No.
Okay, cool.
No, I
We're ready to go.
I chose to go. Yeah, what I learned is I like owning the like steering wheel of a giant ship, and I'm not as great as I thought I would be at sharing said steering wheel. And so someone had to keep the steering wheel, and it was, I had an opportunity come up that, at the same time I was just like, okay, I don't want to be the person that fights over a steering wheel.
Yeah, I hear you. No problem.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again. I'll follow up by email with more information. And yeah, I'd love to see Paystone become a certified company with the Canadian Workplace Culture Index.
Yeah.
But no expectations. I'll send you more information on it.
Yeah,
And yeah, awesome. Thanks. Have
All
a great
right.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.